Talkin Beavers is presented by Par Lumber. Welcome into another season of Talkin Beavers. I'm your host, AJ McCord, alongside voice of the Beavers, Mike Parker, and Jayson Baptiste, defensive end for Oregon State 2001-2003. We are so excited to be back with you talking Oregon State football after an offseason that, honestly, you guys, pretty boring in terms of college football.
Yeah, nothing going on at all. Just another ho-hum season ahead of us, AJ. Thanks for making note.
Well, I'm so excited to get into everything that is Oregon State football in just a minute. But of course, first and foremost, the offseason was anything but boring for college football conferences, the Pac-12 in particular. So let's get into it really quickly, catch you up on anything you might have missed. And that includes a whole lot of movement when it comes to the Pac-12. So, of course, we knew already this was going to be the last season of USC and UCLA in the Pac-12 as it stands. They go on to join the Big Ten in next season. However, joining them and departing from the Pac-12, we have Oregon and Washington. They also going off to the Big Ten. And then you have Arizona State, Arizona, Colorado, and Utah, who are all joining the Big 12. So if your math is mathing correctly, then that means we've gone from 12 schools to 4 remaining in the Pac-12 conference: Oregon State, Washington State, Cal, and Stanford, as we head into this final season of the Pac-12 as it has stood for quite some time. Time now for our opening drive, brought to you by Capital Toyota, your way on the Parkway. You guys, no better way to start an opening drive than just by talking about all of the movement within the Pac-12 conference, where it leaves Oregon State, where it leaves college football, really. So Mike, I want to start with you. Everything that has happened this offseason as we head into this year, what are you thinking about Oregon State, Pac-12, college football as a whole?
May I sigh first of all, before I do anything else, just a sigh, an exhale. But I've been sighing a lot, to be honest with you, AJ, and I've been seeing this coming for decades, in that back in the 90s, when I thought college football was in a good place, we had some great storylines in our beloved conference, then the Pac-10, year after year after year, with teams going to the Granddaddy and the Rose Bowl. Great stories. Wisconsin going for the first time since 93, then Oregon in 94, Northwestern in 95, Arizona State playing for a national title in 96, Washington State 97, UCLA for the title in 98, Stanford for the first time since 71 in 1999, the Beavers right there with a chance to go in 2000, and did go to a championship game, a BCS game on New Year's night in Tempe. Those were incredible storylines, and how that college football was more vibrant and healthy than ever. But at that same time, the rhetoric everywhere was, we got to settle this on the field. We've got to expand a playoff. We can't have dual champions. We got to settle it on the field. We got to have a playoff system. And I remember thinking, there's nothing wrong with what we have right now. And I've never been a big believer in expanding playoffs or even going to a playoff. The regional rivalries and the integrity of college football was glorious for decades. And in our conference for 108 years was glorious. So I've been sighing. I've had to deal with anger. I've had to deal with frustration, regret, resentment. I'm also very excited about Beaver football in 2023, and I become more so as we approach the season. But I've got to be honest with you, the last couple of weeks, in thinking about what's happened to our conference, has been very hurtful to me as a longtime fan of it since I was 7 years old.
I don't blame you, Mike. There's been a lot of emotions coming from a lot of different sides of college football and Oregon State in particular. Scott Barnes, Oregon State athletic director, sharing some of those emotions with me in a one-on-one interview. We're going to bring you exclusively here on Talking Beavers in just a few minutes. But Jayson, as somebody who played in the conference, played for Oregon State, wore that uniform, what are you thinking heading into this final year of the Pac-12 as we have known it?
Yeah, thanks, AJ. I think Mike touched on a lot of the sentiments that a lot of us former players and even current players are feeling. Sadness, disappointment, anger. The one thing that I remember as a former player is I always regarded our conference to have exactly what they talked about, the Conference of Champions. Now, with this new realignment and teams leaving and universities going to different conferences, that could no longer be the case. And a lot of the rivalries that we've all loved over the course of the years and watched and enjoyed is coming to an end. So, as a former player that, enjoyed playing against a lot of those programs, I feel a lot of sadness in the fact that that is no longer going to be the case moving forward. And I only can hope at this point that there's some kind of silver lining somewhere in the near future.
Silver lining is certainly something that Scott Barnes is looking for when it comes to Beaver Nation and the message that he wants to send to Oregon State and their fans as we head into this year. Because, of course, Oregon State, one of those teams left in the Pac-12, one of the four, with a lot of questions. Where do we go from here? How does this leave us in the future of college football? Scott Barnes gives us his answers coming up next on Talkin Beavers. Talkin Beavers is presented by Par Lumber. It's time for our legendary moment, presented by Abby's, a legendary pizza tradition. Welcome back to Talkin Beavers. There is no better way to kick off our second season than with a very special interview. We are joined now by Oregon State Athletic Director Scott Barnes. Scott, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I know it has been a very hectic summer for you. So many changes in the conference to talk about, where it leaves Oregon State. But first and foremost, I want you to just tell us how you're feeling as we head into this new academic year about where Oregon State sits in both the conference and then as we look into the future.
Yeah, well, AJ, great to be on with you for sure. And first of all, I'll tell you how excited I am, and I know Beaver Nation is for this football season. Can't wait, and how our Beaver Nation has embraced the new stadium. Our single game sales are record highs. Our season tickets are we've got a growth of over 20%. So really excited about all that momentum as we navigate this storm that you're talking about. And it really started last summer, right? And it's been nonstop in terms of the potential for realignment and the breakup of the Pac-12. And we've kept our eyes and ears open. Certainly have been scenario planning all along. But what was striking was how quickly it happened when that fateful Friday, we literally thought we had a deal. And everybody had warmed up to what was presented to us, and then it fell apart in hours. After that, the House of Cards sort of fell apart. So we are left picking up the pieces and moving forward. Obviously, when you're in a market the size of Pullman, Washington, or Corvallis, Oregon, you're not sought after in terms of that realignment as media companies continue to influence those decisions, and those decisions are made based on market size. So we are working tirelessly 24/7 to put 563 student athletes in the very best and highest position.
So I want to go back to that fateful Friday because, like you said, it seemed like there was a deal being had, and you're talking about the day that Washington and Oregon announced their departure, correct? That's
Yes,
the fateful
yes.
Friday. So I want to go back to that because I was reading an article in The Athletic where you did a Q&A and you talked about just how ultimately the leaders did not deliver in getting this right. And so much of this comes down to the relationships that are being built, making sure that everybody in the room knows how everybody else is feeling. And it seems like that sort of fateful Friday, as you're calling it, it felt like the relationships, the trust was there to get a deal done, and then it falls apart at the last minute. So with you as the athletic director for Oregon State, what did you learn from that experience that as you move forward and you look at where this leaves Oregon State, what did you learn from that experience that you're going to carry forward into the relationships that are being developed right now for the next move for Oregon State?
Well, when I talked about relationships, it's a conference office understanding its members and understanding where they sit on any given day. And when you report to a board, making sure that you've got advocates on the board and you're working those relationships as well as media companies. What became obvious and very apparent is the heightened influence that media companies have on conference realignment decisions. And that, in fact, is a bit disturbing because when you think about the interest of the student athlete, that's not being considered. It's not only is it not very high on the list, it's not, in a lot of times, not even on the list when media companies are making this decision. So we pick up the pieces now and we move forward. We suspected this could happen we are limited in our options, but we will do everything we can to restore the Pac-12 as a first option.
And I want to talk about that because there are still 4 members left, obviously: Oregon State, Washington State, Cal, and Stanford. And as you move forward, you've mentioned restoring the Pac-12 as one of the options that you think is maybe the best, foremost option right now. And so how could that position Oregon State to be more of the foundation of this new Pac-12? How do you see that benefiting the Beavers?
Well, I think, first of all, you have to think about, our options. And when we think about Power Five, this is our option right now. And as much as we inserted ourselves in conversations, we weren't invited to the conversations at the Power Five level, nor was Washington State, and in some cases others. But so what's important about this, as arduous a path as it will be, is to retain the Autonomy 5 or Power 5 designation, to build back and retain even CFP path forward, and then the assets that are in the Pac-12, understanding, and we continue to ask these questions and try to find answers to these questions of what we, as a potential voting block of 4, what we have control of and what we can use as we build back. And so those are all important, and they put you obviously well ahead of, say, a Group of 5 opportunity where you wouldn't have the designation as a Power 5, you wouldn't have the same CFP path forward, nor would you have the potential assets that are between the Pac-12 network, bowl relationships, men's basketball units, other items that we're continuing to review and evaluate. So those are all the reasons why, in addition to a simple geography and a history of over 100 years of keeping this core together and building back from that.
More from Scott Barnes after the break. Talkin Beavers is presented by Par Lumber. We continue our conversation with Scott Barnes. Scott, I know we've known each other for years at this point, and I know that it is very sincere when you say that you're losing sleep over what these kinds of things do to the student athletes who are in your care. So in that vein, what is your messaging to the student athletes, both who are already in Corvallis and the ones who are actively being recruited by your coaching staffs?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And we've had dialogue with our student athlete advisory council. I was on a call with Tyler Bilodeau this morning, one of our men's basketball players as well. And just a couple things. One is listening to their concerns. And I think traveling as they see some of their classmates and or others traveling to the Eastern Seaboard, that is a concern, as well as competing at the highest level. And what we're sharing, and I'm sharing this with our coaches, our student athletes, and others, and that's lean into who we are and what we can control. And I'll give you an example. Conference alignment is important, but let me share what's more important. When this broke, that fateful Friday, we had 2 of the highest level recruits we've ever had on our campus for volleyball. Those 2 recruits saw this whole thing unravel. A week later, they committed to Oregon State University. Why? Because of this special place, because of the culture, because of the people that walk the hallways, because the coaches that lead this place, the facilities, the town, the feel and fit, and that is critically important. And so, as we think about our path forward and find clarity in that path, our coaches and our student athletes need to lean into what was the real reason you came here, and a lot of them came here for the coaches, for this place, for the feel and fit, and certainly conference alignment is important. And I don't want to suggest it's not, but it's not the only thing.
Is there anything else that you want to share about this process or what Beaver Nation can be looking forward to as we inch closer and closer to football season?
I think just a call, a rally cry to not just show up and not only show up, but bring your friends, your neighbors. Let's show the country what Beaver Nation is all about as we develop and navigate a path forward.
Scott, thank you so much for your time. I know it's precious. I know you're working around the clock, so we thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on Talkin Beavs, give us a lay of the land, and and everything that you have going on. We really appreciate it.
Go Beavs.
Talkin Beavers is presented by Par Lumber. Welcome back to Talkin Beavers. A whole lot to unpack there from Scott Barnes' interview. Jayson, what is the first thing that stands out to you?
Well, one of the things that stands out to me is what he said about the messaging to the athletes. I think far too often we put so much emphasis on what's happening with the conference, what conference are they going to be in, who's coming into the conference, and all that. But we forget about the athletes, the student athletes. And I think what he's saying in his interview and what matters is that, listen, like the realignment and bringing other universities into the conference is important and all that. But we also have to remember that the student athletes that came to Oregon State came there because of the university and because of the coaches. And with that said, there has to be a way for the student athletes to maintain their focus during these crazy times. And I think he has the right leadership, the right mentality, and emphasizing that messaging to the student athletes because he's done this before. He's seen like different conferences and their realignment and gone through all of that. So I think he's the right person in the right position to give that messaging to the student athletes. I think he's doing a great job with that.
Mike, same question.
Yeah, and no doubt, AJ, that Oregon State is blessed to have Scott in the position that he's in. The job that he's done, first of all, in the shrewdness of his hires, the ability to complete Research Stadium during a pandemic, having no idea necessarily that after the pandemic, then the challenge that he's facing now with the disintegration of what was the Pac-12 conference, to have Scott Barnes, who, as Jayson said, he's been on this road before, that's a big plus. And the fact that the conference, the remaining four, have hired Oliver Luck, a former NFL quarterback himself, the father of Andrew Luck, who has perhaps Stanford's interests at heart in terms of the student-athlete experience, and perhaps a guy that can be another light in the room with Scott. I like the leadership those two guys provide in steering the Pac-4 into whatever incarnation it may be ahead.
Certainly some really good points you guys both made, and I think I would reiterate that, which is that Scott Barnes throughout that entire interview showed nothing but poise and confidence. And right now, that is what the conference, that is what Oregon State needs. College football is going to look different. It is what it is. And Oregon State has been dealt the hand that they have been dealt to some extent, but now it's their time to turn around and deal some cards out. And I think that the leadership, like you're talking about, Mike, it is as good as you could ask for. If you're Oregon State, whether you are a student athlete, a fan, or somebody who's looking at coming to the university, and certainly Scott Barnes taking all three of those interest groups at heart here as we move forward. And so with moving forward, it is time now for a quick fix brought to you by Sun Automotive, auto repair service trusted for over 40 years. So guys, what's your quick fix for the conference at large?
I'm glad there's somebody that can provide a quick fix. I'm not sure that any of us can provide a quick fix on what's going on in college football. Jayson, do you have a quick fix answer for the Beavers?
I have no idea. That's my quick fix, is I have no idea.
Okay.
Well, I think the short answer is that there is no quick fix. But certainly, like we've mentioned, intentional step forwards, that is the quickest way to fix or move forward in conference football. So now let's do our look ahead, brought to you by Leatherman, made of metal. And of course, one thing everyone is talking about as we get closer to the actual football being played here in the month of September is who's going to be quarterback for Oregon State. And right now it looks very strong that Clemson transfer DJ Ungalele is going to be the starter for Oregon State football. He's one of the highest recruited, highly touted transfers that Oregon State has ever had. And so as we look ahead to the quarterback battle for Oregon State, Jayson, what stands out to you about DJ so far and how he could carry this Oregon State offense?
I mean, there's so many things to speak to about the qualities that he has and the skill set that he has. I mean, here you have a quarterback who could drive the ball down the field. He could run when needed. He comes from a conference in the ACC that has tough competition, so he has the experience level that a lot of other quarterbacks who transfer into other universities don't have. He was highly touted out of high school for a reason. He's a proven quarterback. He's done really well at Clemson. He comes back to a pro-style offense with a running back and a running game that will give him a formidable, a formidable force on the ground game. So there's a lot to like about this, and the fact that, like you said, it's a highly touted transfer, probably the highest highly touted transfer that Oregon State's ever had. Has a lot for us to look forward to.
And AJ, the thing that I've been so impressed with is the growth that DJ has made from spring ball to now. It's phenomenal to see him operate in the offense. He was a little bit lost, quite frankly, early in trying to learn everything. It's a pretty thick playbook that Jonathan and Brian Lindgren have given him. And to see just how he's gone to work. And his teammates love him. That's a big quality in a quarterback. They love him. Now, Jonathan, just for the record, Jonathan himself has yet to declare DJ Uiagalelei as the starter. We're getting reports on it left and right. We'll wait for Coach Smith to confirm what we believe to be true, but I'm excited about what I've seen in the growth of DJ and look forward to his leadership in this offense. And as long as we're looking ahead, I'm also excited the fact that this weekend, while the Beavers aren't playing, 2 of their first 3 opponents are, with Ohio playing at San Diego State and San Jose State playing at USC. So the Beavers are going to get some early looks. We as Beaver Nation will get some early looks at 2 of those first 3 opponents this weekend.
Oregon State is going to kick off their season against San Jose State on September 3rd, and we are so excited for another season of Talkin Beavers. Thank you so much for joining us for our very first episode. Next week, we'll be right back at it, taking a look at San Jose State, Oregon State. Hopefully, Smith will have named a starter, but if we know anything, conferences have changed, schools have changed, but Jonathan Smith loves himself a quarterback battle, and he will wait until the last minute to tell us who's starting. So we'll bring it to you as we get it. But thank you so much for joining us on the very first episode of Season 2 of Talkin Beavers. We'll see you next week.